Okay, returning to Srimad Bhagavatam Canto 2, Chapter 9. Answers citing the Lord's version. We are still on text number 3 from that chapter. And I'll read back one verse. Text number 2. Bahurupa ivabhati mayaya bahurupaya. The illusion that living entity appears in so many forms, which are offered by the external energy of the Lord. Did you ever think about how many forms there are? Each forms of life.
Oh.
We know there's so many species of life, but you think about all the different bodies that are created, like these little, like those guys, over there on the wall, and like bugs. There's ladybugs, just look at that, all spotted, all pretty. They just crawl around, they fly around, and what do they do? What's their purpose, And you look at the flowers and all the different bodies. The bodies are just this extraordinary display of energy. The illusion of living entity appears in so many forms, which are offered by the external energy. And the encaged living entity, while enjoying in the modes of nature, misconceives, thinking in terms of I and mine. That was text number 2. And the one that we're actually on is Yarhi Vana Mimini Sve Parashvin Kala Mayayo. As soon as the living entity becomes situated in his constitutional glory and begins to enjoy the transcendence beyond time and the material energy, he at once gives up those two misconceptions of life, I and mine, and thus becomes fully manifested as the pure self. Pure self. That's what we are, actually, underneath all these coverings and illusions and misconceptions. It's very thorough. The brainwashing in the material world is very thorough. In the womb we pray, okay, I promise in this life I won't forget you. As soon as you come out, they're covered by so many illusions and desires, and say, wow, I got a nice new body here. This is really, this is all I could possibly hope for. Now I can really enjoy. I forget about those prayers I offered there in the womb. I'm coming out swinging. And so that's the covering, very thorough, very, very powerful illusion. The misconceptions, this is paragraph number 2 and text number 3. The misconception of I am the Lord, or I am the Supreme, is more dangerous than the misconception of mine. Although there are sometimes directions in the Vedic literatures to think oneself one with the Lord, that does not mean that one becomes identified in every respect with Him. Undoubtedly, there is oneness of the living entity with the Lord in many respects, but ultimately the living entity is subordinate to Him, to the Lord, and He is constitutionally meant for satisfying the senses of the Lord. Constitutionally meant, it's in the Constitution. You must obey the rules of the Constitution. It is constitutionally meant for satisfying the senses of the Lord. So people are breaking the rules of the Constitution. They're trying to amend it. Say, no, I'm the enjoyer. My senses are meant for my enjoyment. But actually, constitutionally meant for satisfying the senses of Krishna. When we take that position, which is contrary to everything we've ever learned and everything we've ever experienced, that I am really not the supreme enjoyer, but Krishna is the supreme enjoyer, and my existence is for the purpose of rendering happiness to Him, some kind of service, then we begin to actually enjoy. That's where the living entity becomes, he's back following the constitution again. The Lord therefore asked the conditioned souls to surrender. Had the living entities not been subordinate to the supreme will, why would the living entity be asked to surrender? Had the living being been equal in all respects, then why was he put under the influence of Maya? We have already discussed many times that the material energy is controlled by the Lord. The Bhagavad Gita confirms this controlling power of the Lord over the material nature in Bhagavad Gita 9:10. Can a living entity who claims to be as good as the Supreme Being control the material nature? See, that's the key. If you can claim this to be, you're the Lord of all this display of energy, then you should be able to control it. You should be able to control time. If you want to go backwards, if you want time to go backwards, you should be able to do that. But there's no one who can actually make time go backwards except Krishna. So if Krishna wants time to go backwards, and sometimes some very strange things happen in that mysterious realm of time. Sometimes a long period of time feels like a second, or a second feels like it's like an eternity. So that feeling of time, that energy is all controlled by Krishna. He makes it feel that way. That that energy we just take for granted. But so if we're actually the Lord, then we should be able to control time. I should point at that clock up there, and I can just make the hands go backwards. But I can't do that. I can't even make them go forwards. They're going forward on their own, because Krishna's in control of the clock, not me. We have already discussed many times that the material energy is controlled by the Lord. The foolish I would reply that he would do so in the future. That's the idea. So I'm not quite at that pure godly state yet. I have to mature into that, being that mature God that I know I am. So I'll be able to do these things in the future. In the future, I'll be able to make that hand go backwards on the clock. I can't do it right now because I'm not fully matured yet. I'm not grown up yet. I'm not fully grown up, God. Would reply that he would do so in the future, even accepting that in the future one would be as good as the controller of material nature as the Supreme Being. Then why is he now under the control of material nature? Yeah, well, so why? What's the problem right now? Why can't you control that clock right now? Why do you have to wait till some future time when you become a more powerful God? So this is the illusory energy, and it makes the poor soul become so embarrassed in so many ways, covered by these crazy desires. It's actually insanity in a lot of ways, and practically every way. Insanity is really the part and parcel of being conditioned soul. It's just insane. That's why Prabhupada says, more or less, everyone in the material is more or less crazy. More or less. So some people are more crazy than others, and some people are less crazy. Like you have the gyanis, they have some transcendental thoughts, and you have mystic yogis who they're trying to get sane. They're trying to find some sanity inside themselves. And then finally you have the devotees who have taken the pledge. I surrender unto you, Krishna, now I'm your eternal servant. Do with me as you like. Sanity, finally. That's true sanity. Then happiness begins, because now then you can step back. Even inside this body, you can step back, and you can begin to look at it differently. You begin to look at it that this is not really my energy. I had the illusion of thinking that I had control over this energy. I have no control over this energy. This energy is actually not mine. It is meant for serving Krishna. This is his energy. Even my own body, this energy of my body is also meant for serving him. Then I become sane. Then that sanity takes place. The Bhagavad Gita says that one can be freed from the control of the material nature by surrendering unto the Supreme Lord. But if there is no surrender, then the living entity will never be able to control the material nature. So this misconception of I must also be given up by practicing the way of devotional service, or firmly being situated in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Prabhupada always brings it to that same point. Transcendental loving service. It's not mechanical. It has to be done with love and affection. And then true sanity takes place. This is the real position of the Jiva soul, is to have that loving transcendental service permeating his entire consciousness at every moment, waking up every day in such pure happiness. Only the material energy causes all these problems, and we identify with these problems, and we identify with the material energy. It's not really us. We're actually situated inside in this pure transcendental loving service. So, a poor man without any employment or without any occupation may undergo so many troubles in life. But if by chance the same man gets a good service under the government, then he at once becomes happy. Oh, now the government's taking care of me. I have a job in the government. You see some of the Indian movies are like that. Oh, the government job, you get a government job, you're set, like that. Because they all everyone wants to feel like they're employed by some really solid, a really solid power. And the highest power on the material planet that we have constant engagement with is the government. So if you become a government employee, you have all these benefits, everything is laid out for you, practically guaranteed life of reasonable peace. There is no profit in denying the supremacy of the Lord, who is the controller of all energies, but one should be constitutionally situated in one's own glory, namely, to be situated in the pure consciousness of being the eternal servitor of the Lord. You see, that's why Hanuman is so famous, because he's the most famous servitor. He's the servitor of Ram and Sita, and he's like, there is nothing in his consciousness other than service to Ram and Sita. And you see all these different big, right in Delhi, you can jive, and all of a sudden there's this huge, monstrous deity of Hanuman. He's like 200 feet tall, and he's got his hand, he's ripping open his chest, and there's Ram and Sita in his chest, So he's famous as being that situated in his constitutional glory. He's become glorious just by being the servitor of Krishna, of Ram. In his constitutional life, the living entity, in his conditioned life, the living entity is servant of the illusory energy, Maya, and in his liberated state, he is the pure, unqualified servant, unqualified. You should never think that we're qualified servants either. Always have a humble attitude. We're really not qualified to do anything. But we have to try, and then we try to render some service. And Krishna's happy with the simplest service, like a leaf, a flower, if it's offered with love. So if our service is offered with love, then it becomes nice. Unqualified, the pure, unqualified servant of the Lord. To become untinged by the modes of material nature is the qualification for entering into the service of the Lord. So one has to reach the platform of Shuddha Sattva, beyond the modes of material nature, to begin to enter into the real feelings of service, that transcendental loving service where one is immersed in the ocean of happiness of all times. There is no break in it. In the modes of material nature, cause you to be in a world of duality, and sometimes it's this way, sometimes it's that way, and you identify with these, whichever way it's going. But in the Shuddha Sattva, that is all pretty much put in the background. those modes of nature are put in the background, and you're situated in a pure transcendental state which never changes, and you don't react to the things that are going on in the world like you used to. As long as one is a servant of mental concoction, one cannot be completely freed from the disease of I and mine. Mental concoction means, my last plan didn't work out so well. So I'm going to make a new plan. It's a mental concoction. Now I'm going to become this, or I'm going to become this. I'm going to become that. You know, like if you go to college and you think, oh, I want to go to college, I want to be that. But when you get there, you think, well, maybe I'd rather be that. Mental concoction, all mental concoction. And actually, you're none of those things. So because you're still under the influence of I and mine, that this body is me, and the things I see around me are all mine. So that concoction of things that I'm thinking that this is me, and all the things around me that I can touch with my body and senses are mine, has to be given up. And it can be given up just by culture of knowledge. Culture of knowledge is the beginning, and then the realization through the process of rendering devotional service to Krishna in the practicing state brings one to the ultimate conclusion of pure loving devotional service in the spontaneous state. And then happiness, finally, satisfaction, finally. Okay. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.